During the counterculture of the 1960s and the associated hippie movement, a group of individuals began a journey of exploration outside of themselves by traveling to certain unknown areas of the world at the time for common people, such as the East, India. Think of the Beatles in Rishikesh, and all the people traveling in Goa and Bali and Nepal and Afghanistan, meeting with the mystics, with the yogis, and the Tibetan Buddhism and the great passion for yoga and this kind of practices. On the other hand, inside of themselves, they began a journey of exploration of different realms of mind, different realms of consciousness. And they did so by the use of different means. One of these was definitely the use of psychedelic substances, where in those years I would say that LSD was the king of the substances. And among the greatest advocates of it was the very famous, very popular Timothy Leary, Professor Timothy Leary, Dr. Timothy Leary, yeah, who was a great supporter and promoter of LSD. And he didn't come up with the term himself, but he popularized the term set and setting, which is what I quickly want to talk about today. Set and setting, when Timothy Leary was using this term, was referring to the psychedelic experience, how to correctly, properly live a psychedelic experience in order to gain benefit out of it, learn something from it, get an insight from it. In set and setting, set refers to, we can say that set and setting refers to environment. We can translate it as environment, where set refers to the internal environment and setting refers to the external environment. So by internal environment, meaning the mindset of a person, the mood in that very specific moment in time, his emotions, his expectations. On the other hand, setting, which refers to the external environment, meaning what context are you in, what people are around you, the temperature, if there is anything that is bothering you, that is annoying you, the kind of music that is playing. So you can clearly understand that if you are in a place in a nightclub playing very very hard music, or if you're surrounded by people that are very unpleasant, that are bothering you, or if for whatever reason you are in a bad mood because something happened to you that day, you understand that you are most likely to live an experience of, probably, let's say, a worse kind. You are more likely to go through a bad trip, what is called bad trip. Then is there really such a thing as a bad trip? Well, that is a discussion for another time, because ultimately you can learn from anything, right? From a good experience or from a bad experience. This is not the point. The point is that if at that time, the use of this specific language, set and setting, was referring to psychedelic experience. With time, in time, other people used the same terminology in different contexts. For example, the same terminology was used later on to indicate certain experiences with opioid substances. So if you think about it, if you break a bone and you go to a hospital and you are given very strong opioid painkillers for an amount of time, the moment you come out of the hospital, you are not an addict to opioid substances, right? You're not gonna look for heroin or keep wanting to do it, you know. On the other hand, if you start using heroin on the street, you will very likely get addicted. And the reason is because set and setting are different, right? So this same exact terminology we can use taken from a slightly different perspective, but you get the point, you get the juice in the word of spirituality, in the whole, especially where I want to put more focus on, as I was already mentioning in the previous video, to that whole realm of the woo-woo word of spiritual knowledge, of spiritual practice. Because, you see, if you take a specific knowledge, a specific story, a specific practice, and you are explained or you are told that by a Western guy who maybe has studied that subject all of his life, and he is really knowledgeable and he is really skilled and he achieved something, you will probably be less likely to believe him rather than to believe something else that is told by a person that is instead from the East, somebody from India, somebody from China will tell you something about spirituality, will tell you something about energy, how to achieve certain skills. You will probably more likely be inclined to trust that person more, simply because of where he comes from. So it is very important in this context to understand set and setting, right? In the sense that you have to analyze yourself and you have to analyze the external environment to understand exactly the context within which an experience is happening. For example, last time I showed you a little game with cards. Now this is something very interesting because it was probably an experiment, although I cannot clearly recall where this was coming from, because in the past something like this happened. There was a magic show with a very famous magician, I don't remember who performed this magic show, divided in two parts. The first part was mostly performed through manipulation. So things were appearing and disappearing and teleporting and becoming big and becoming small and changing, and you know, the kind of things that you normally see in magic shows. But the second part, the final little part of the show, was mentalism. So as you know, mentalism is this, how to say, as I was mentioning last time, this internal, let's say, aspect of magic, of the art of creating illusion for the mind, right? And the magician did something where, I don't remember exactly, but something where he basically guessed something of a random person in the audience, some very, very private information, either like a bank account or a telephone number or an address, you know, that kind of things, which is something that there is no way you could know. No way. So at the end of the show, it is funny because people really, really, really believed that this person had magic powers. So for the very first part, with the manipulation, with the illusion aspect of it, people knew that there was a trick, although they didn't know what the trick was. But in the latest part of the performance, people really believed that the magician and the mentalist had really psychic abilities, because they could not believe that there could be a trick in guessing such, you know, private, secret information. So, whenever you approach a word of spirituality, spiritual practices, all the woo-woo word, and so on and so on and so on, be always mindful of set and setting, of the internal environment, your expectations, your belief system, and the external environment, who the person is, what the person is saying, right? Why is the person saying that? Don't be fooled by the mystical, romantic story. Set and setting. Very important. Thank you.